Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming this afternoon. We'll probably still have some more folks join us. My name is Randy Purvis. I am one of the co-chairs of Executive in Residence, and I'm honored to be part of this today. And so we're going to start off with a quick couple-minute video. We showed this last night at our welcome reception, so we just want to share it with the rest of you.
A perspective that I've always had is I look at potentially the company I'm working for. If I were to get 5 minutes with their CEO on a typical day, how hard is that? Now, if I were to ask them for a week of their time, how hard is that? Right? And that typically doesn't happen. You won't be able to find someone who's so influential in their decision making, have that much time available to meet students, talk to them and educate them about what they took away from Purdue University, what they valued when they were here, and more importantly, how they apply that in their daily life going forward. To have that opportunity here, and not just one, but 4 or 5 of them every semester, is a plethora of knowledge I don't think that everyone capitalizes on. So I just hope that continues to happen, and I really, really wish Executive in Residences continues to grow the way it has, and reaches how many students it does every day. It is truly an amazing organization to be a part of.
I think the thing that I'm most excited about is possibilities. I think there's just so many opportunities to continue to grow the program. I'm really, really hoping we can get it endowed so that it can live on in perpetuity, because I think it has brought so much to our students and given them such a good glimpse into again, possibilities, the possibilities of what they can become, the possibilities of how they can get there. It helps them to really understand how the experiences they're having now will affect their future. I think sometimes we get so caught up in the moment that we don't really think about, wow, if I do this, not only is it going to look good on my resume, but at some point in the future, I'll be able to look back on this and it'll be a pivotal moment, or the decision that I made while I was in college in the role of X allowed me to be able to do now Y, and that's really helped to propel my career. It's really been a pivotal moment in me being able to be successful. It's helped me to know how to make a good decision, know how to handle money. I mean, there's just so many things that when execs can come back and talk about what made their time at Purdue valuable for them, I think that's for me the best possibility of all, is for today's student to be able to see themselves in the people that are back.
I really enjoyed the coffee and consulting option because I got to talk with Teresa Roach, and I explained all of the things that I was learning on campus and how I hope that transfers into my future. And so it was really cool to hear her feedback on how to continue trying to expand my passions. So it was a really great way to make a professional connection, and now we're even connected on LinkedIn, and we've been messaging back and forth, and I've been telling her that I'm going to physical therapy school in the fall, and she's super excited, and it's really cool to hear about the things that she continues to do in her professional career as well.
It was very personalized to the audience. Like, every session was different, whether it was a coffee and consulting or it was kind of the event that we put on through Mosaic Mile. It was just very much kind of about the students and the executives kind of sharing their stories and figuring out how they can have like a solid lesson outcome for students.
What has been very special is every conversation I'm meeting people that are curious, that are on the expression of their life. I love the questions that they're asking. So the program, I don't think there's any other program like this in the nation, maybe even the world. When I told people I was coming back, people, tell me more about that. And I said, well, I think it's this, but I'm not sure. The design of it is impeccable. The design of it is all about being with students and other staff members. I've had one-on-one conversations, groups. Sometimes it's just been a dialogue. The design is just amazing. I feel supported, and that if I just show up and stay awake, the conditions for me to bring what I have to give have been truly amplified. It's unbelievable, and I think Purdue has a competitive differentiator in having designed this program. And I love that there's many of us that had the joy of being a graduate here that are willing to come back to be available to students today.
Now I'd like to bring up our Vice Provost of Student Life, Dr. Beth McCuskey.
Well, happy homecoming, everybody. How amazing is this? So as we celebrate not just our 150th of our grand university, we are also celebrating our 5th anniversary of our Executive in Residence program. And I thought I'd share just a few reflections of it as we prepare for this panel. So the seed of this started, we had built a beautiful apartment in our 3rd Street Suites building with the intention of maybe doing some sort of a faculty in residence model. The problem is we had absolutely nothing planned in terms of pulling that one off, but we had this beautiful space. So we started brainstorming what else might we do. So I remember sitting at Ross-Ade Stadium in the Shively Club, brainstorming with one of our alums about this idea of maybe an executive. You know, could somebody maybe get off a month, yeah, right, to come join us and learn? Oh, you need to talk to Bob Bowen. And I don't know if you all know Bob Bowen, but he is an amazing one of Purdue's alums. We have Bowen Labs on campus due to his generosity. Just a spectacular human being. And she wanted me to go that moment to his suite to pitch this idea to him on this total whim. So it's like, oh, I walk into Bob Bowen's suite, I sit down with Bob Bowen, meet him for the very first time and say, how would you like to move in, Bob, with a bunch of college students and live with us for a semester? And clearly that was not the model to go. But we talked through it, and we decided that there was something here. There was some nugget here that perhaps if we tailored this a little better, made things a little tighter, there could be some potential here. So the next pitch was with Barb Frazee and I and David Lassiter to Rusty Roof. And we sat down with Rusty and we put this little idea on the table of coming back maybe for a week, maybe connecting in, you know, all the time thinking, oh my, is this really going to be a possibility? And Rusty just jumped on this and took advantage of this opportunity and really helped us create what this is. And so can you join me in thanking Rusty, because he truly was first one out of the gate. So as this program has evolved, as you know, we are booking our executive in residences well into the future. There is a lot of support for this program, a lot of demand for this program, and it does so many things. First, as alumni, it brings all of you back to campus, and it connects you with our students, it connects you back with your colleges, it connects you with deans and others, really who love to hear from you and learn from your experiences. The key point, though, is to really work on building those connections with students. And some of the ideas that you all have in terms of how you wish to create that energy, they're just profound. Everything from poker nights to Shark Tank exercises, to going into class, to speaking to RAs. I mean, these experiences are uniquely you, and that's what makes this program so valuable. The other thing that really has come out of this that I didn't realize going into it how powerful this would be, as I sometimes talk with you and debrief your experiences and the times that you had here with our students, it has given you the power of reflection, the power to look back on your own experiences, to reflect on what mattered to you while you were here, and how you translated that into so many different things in your lives and in your careers. And that power is just amazing. I mean, some of you have cried in my presence, I will say that, because of the power of that reflection. So here we sit today celebrating the conclusion of our 150th anniversary as Purdue University. As we kicked this bicentennial, or sesquicentennial, off about a year ago, I remember walking across campus, and it was this lovely, lovely fall day, and I was crossing between Cary and the Purdue Mall there, And I noticed the big 150th symbolism all over the place. Here's clearly Armstrong Hall and the Armstrong statue, and you think about all the big changes in the world that have happened because of Purdue University. And I thought about many of the conversations that I've had with alumni and their own experiences and how Purdue has prepared them for these extraordinary lives. And then I started thinking about the next big anniversary. And of course, that'll be our bicentennial in another 50 years. And all around me were today's college students. And I thought, at the bicentennial, they're going to be about 70 years old. They are the next generation of leadership for Purdue University. And our experiences that we help create for them will help to lead this world forward. And so for each and every one of you who have contributed to this next generation, to the reflections of our bicentennial students in another 50 years on the same types of reflections you've had about your experiences here at Purdue, I want to thank you for helping them, for helping them learn and grow and get that grounding in all of things that are good about this institution, about hard work, and about the contributions that you've made in your lives and in your careers. So I want to thank you, each and every one of you, for contributing and for being here again today in celebration of our 5-year anniversary. Can you all help me do that, please? I now have a distinct pleasure of introducing Drew Madison, who is going to lead our panel conversation today. Drew has this innovation and innovative presence. He is so amazingly creative. And Drew has served in many ways helping us build the Executive in Residence program. He is currently at the Marmalade Agency as Executive Vice President for Business Development. And Marmalade's an independently owned, it's a strategic marketing firm focusing on creating brands and marketing techniques for strong and influential impact. Drew not only served as an executive in residence, but came back to campus and helped us really focus on informing this programming and building it into the future. So will you please join me in thanking and welcoming Drew Madison.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Democratic presidential debate. I was asked to do this panel before I understood the numbers in front of me, so we're gonna have a good time today, yeah. I had some initial notes prepared, but I'm gonna move past those. Just a couple things to say. Based on some loose math, there is over 430 years of experience sitting on this stage. So if you're sitting in this audience and you are a student, you can start rubbing that in with anyone else that you know, because the amount of experience and information that you can get today is astronomical. Because the connections that we make as humans and we engage is the same as it's always been. The cultural system in which we work is different. And so understanding what experience can translate to what you want to do is pretty amazingly powerful. So we're going to go through a whole list of questions, and we'll see how this goes. All right? Are we ready? All right. So Beth, I'm going to start with you. What was the biggest impact that Purdue made for you and you for the world during your time here?
Well, the first part's really easy. I went to graduate school here, did not go to undergrad, and people have often asked me, why do you spend so much time with Purdue since that's where you went to grad school? And it's because of one thing that happened very early on. I was in the orientation where they were pretty much scaring us about, only a few of you will make it through the graduate program, right? And I started to notice this blinking light stuff when I was listening to the presentation. And 3 months later, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And the interesting thing is, I'd say 6 months earlier, I was racing bicycles in Colorado. So I knew there was like a kind of a diametrically opposed experience I was having. And I remember I went into the person who was running the management program, and I said, look, I'm failing everything. I can't stay. I'm going to drop out. And he looked at me and he said, didn't you talk to me about the Master's in Human Resources? And I'm thinking to myself, what? I never talked to you about that. And it's like, Beth, just close your lips and listen. So what essentially happened in that meeting where I was going to go quit, he pretty much reworked my entire schedule such that I could graduate on time. And that spoke volumes to me about, one, I was worth it, and two, the university really cared about me, and they made an effort to keep me here. So Purdue's a great place.
That's amazing. Thank you. Gary, same question to you. Oh, you need a microphone. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. For me, it was teamwork, really, and just understanding, coming right out of high school, and like many others, was all about, hey, what can I do and how can I be successful only by myself? And one of the things I found out here with Purdue is, especially engineering school, I came out in '89 as a double E and stayed on and got my master's in double E in '90 and then on to Cranner in '96. But relying on other people, building relationships and networks, and understanding that the importance of mentors and also giving back and helping others was a key lesson that I learned here at Purdue that really kind of followed me throughout my entire career. Related to that, we've heard this term, their president Daniels has used this term called grit. I heard Ricky talk about that term yesterday, and the importance of just grinding it out. Purdue really taught me that. There was a lot of failures along the way. Some of our students here can relate to Physics 152, and I remember failing, and then I heard of the word curve afterwards, and I was so happy about the curve, but the experience of failing and then getting back up and gritting it out and grinding it out just became a part of life even throughout my career, now running a really good business down in Indianapolis. That whole grit and grinding it out was something I really learned here at Purdue, and I'll value that for the rest of my life.
Well, minus the anxiety from my memories of 152. So we have a few Daves on stage. So Dave Clifton, a question to you. What the biggest impact that Purdue made for you and you on the world during your time here?
Yeah, well, very similar. I mean, I remember that physics course. I got a 13% on that exam.
Yeah.
And I got a C.
Good job. Top of curve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was detox. So, but the large university setting with very, if you will, prestigious and very bright minds around you set a tone for me that was always formative. One, I sought it out. I sought out brighter people always. And it was really easy to do at Purdue. I mean, you just kind of like walk down a sidewalk and you run into somebody smarter than you. And that taught me a lot about, okay, well, I'm never going to be the smartest guy in the room. But at the same perspective, I still can influence and I can still make a difference. So I took the experiences from Purdue, of that large environment and recognizing I don't have to be the smartest. All I have to do is, be willing to work with and be heard by the smartest, and you can actually make a big difference. And that really powered my career. So Purdue made it happen.
I will ask, we're going to move on to a couple other questions, but I'd ask the panel to just think about that in the background, because that's kind of an overarching theme is, broadly, what is the university, what have you done here, and what is the impact that you feel like you've taken from there? So we talked a little bit about grit, which I think everyone has sort of their own version of that and how it manifests itself, but how should we define grit, and how do you see that embodied in the corporate world? And Mark, this one's for you. The microphone.
Yeah, so grit, it's a good question. And I think what Purdue teaches you is hard work and being prepared. And getting up on a morning like today when it's raining, it's easy to stay in bed and say, I don't want to go to class. But you get up and you go, and that's the expectation. And I think when you get out in the corporate world, you're going to get what you earn. And you're going to get there by being prepared, showing up every day, and exceeding expectations and be ready to work hard. You all are learning a work ethic here that unfortunately not all universities have. And so you will be able to, if you apply those same skills, I think you'll set yourself apart rather quickly. And so to me, grit is showing up, being ready, being prepared, and this place is a great training ground for that. And you will be glad when you get into the corporate world that you've had that training. So,
Patrick, same question for you. So for those of you that don't know, Patrick is our fourth time executive in residence. Yeah, he's pretty awesome. Or he can't find another place to live. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm homeless. My definition of grit is 7:30 a.m. Saturday organic chemistry.
Oy.
Right? Right? And so Monday, it was a Saturday morning class. We had to be there, and it was just awful, right? And oh, by the way, it's also sub-zero going to class because there's no snow days or cold days here. And so to me, that's grit. I mean, it's not just the class. It's not just organic chemistry, which is hard enough in itself. But it was the 7:30 Saturday, and it was, getting up and learning and all that. And so so much of what grit is beyond the coursework and learning what's here, but also what everybody said. It's just sticking to it and making it work. And flipping that into, I had a 28-year career at Accenture, and that's all about grit. And I can drive it right back to what I learned here about just making things happen. And just, even if it's hard, even if it's not understanding everything. The other one I would say, just to add to that, is Physics 251 was my bane of my existence. And I literally would sit there and listen to the professor and go like, this is Greek. This just as well as be Greek. And I'd read the book at night, and it actually was Greek. And I was like, if I can get through this, I can survive anything in the corporate world. And that's true. There's no problem that anybody could put in front of me that beats Physics 251 for me. So that's, to me, what grit was. And I learned it all right here.
My lovely bride of 25 years, she and I met here. She was a chemi major, and we drove on campus yesterday. She reminded me of her junior year, spring semester. She had 5 7:30s. Yeah, right? I'm like, yeah, I seem to remember that because you didn't like me that semester. We didn't hang out a lot. She's here today, yeah. She's actually over at the is it Discovery Park? So she's a patent attorney. So she's over there meeting with the head of tech transfer. What's that? Yeah, I know. Well, she went to the dark side. What can we say? Okay, so thank you, Patrick. So some bigger questions here. So Teresa, for you, when you attend any college or university, you're essentially entering an ecosystem, right? It's both entirely independent while also having hundreds of global connections, as we can all attest to. What should today's students do to maximize their living and learning while in this Purdue ecosystem?
Thank you, Drew. And do I get to decide what Democratic candidate I am?
Sure.
And when you added up the years, I think I'm like 1/8 of them. So I think you're going to know what candidate I might be. So let me start with a tweet. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, no, that's fine.
Thank you.
We can take this wherever you'd like to.
Okay, thank you. I'll stop it right here. So I'm going to start with a tweet, and then I wrote a little bit more of a blog post, because this question really resonated with me. So my tweet that I would say to any of us and to students at Purdue today is be present, stay conscious, and engage in this life. That would be my advice for how to operate into the ecosystem. But let me tell you why I chose this question, because later this month, I'm in a learning community, and this is our topic for the year. We focus on a theme for an entire year, and the title of our theme this year is New Rules of the Game, Ecologies of Learning in a Transforming World. Now, ecology is interchangeable with ecosystem, and starting this summer, I began reading because I was very curious about what does it mean to have learning ecologies. So at this point in my own learning, and I continue to learn every day, let me offer you 4 questions that I discovered in my reading this year that I think will lend to some advice to you to think about these questions. Some of the answers any of us may give could be the same, but I think our answer is a one-size-fits-one. One of the exercises that a global thought leader is going to take us through later this month is we're going to map out our own personal learning ecology. So the first system is the micro, and this has to do with what are the conditions. So as a student, what are the conditions in which you operate and learn best in? Do you need quiet time? Is it in dialogue with others? What sense of space and place do you need to have? Get conscious about that. At the meso system, what are the interrelationships between all of your contexts? So where do you live and who do you live with? Who's in your class? Who are your professors? What classes are you in? What are the groups that you affiliate with? Online material and books that you read? Now, my bias has always been to connect the dots. So as you connect all of those different contexts and you look at the threads, think about what's happening. So I used to love when I was an undergrad and grad student here that I would have content in a class that I found very provocative and it made me think hard. And then I would walk on campus, I would see a friend, and we'd be in dialogue about it. And then I would walk further and I would see a poster about a lecture that seemed to relate to it. So in all those contexts where I lived, walking on campus, the organizations I was involved in, all of those helped me think about my ecology of learning. Now, I gotta tell you, I wasn't very conscious as an undergrad all the time. So it was in that reflection later in life, and also I was very blessed to have people here at Purdue that gave me moments of reflection to think about what the heck was happening as I was learning in my ecology. The third system is ecosystem. So what are the other contexts that you may not actively participate in, but they shape the world that we're in? So I live in Fort Collins, Colorado. We have a land-grant institution that's 150 years there, Colorado State University. It's right in the middle of the city. So the students there are as much a part of the city, because the minute they cross one street, they're in our community. So how do they think about what's happening in our city? What are the policies we have about housing, mobility issues? So even though they're a student at CSU, they're a resident of Fort Collins, and that's a different context. And I don't know about you, but I think even with all that's happening internationally, the context that we're in, even though we may not be directly involved, certainly impact us. The last is at the microsystem. If you think about the context of the three earlier systems that I just mentioned, what are the historical, socioeconomic, and cultural contexts? So just this week, I had the distinct pleasure of a Purdue student interviewing me to talk about what was it like to be a female here in the 70s. And I really enjoyed the conversation, listening to what she had already found from her research, but to reflect on that was an explosion of a time. We were all trying to still get ERA passed. Some women were not allowed to have their own credit cards still. And so even thinking about that historically and just the cultural context when I was a student was pretty powerful. If you choose to respond to these questions, you can ask yourself then, if this is my learning ecology, are there inhibitors to my learning? Are there facilitators? And the facilitators you want to amplify and the barriers you want to try to reduce. Thank you.
I always feel like I don't think anywhere near as much.
I think, therefore I am.
Yeah. Emily, same
Okay.
question for you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Teresa. That was awesome. So I would say, these 4 years now, in retrospect, I wouldn't have said this when I was here, but it's really a gift. It's a laboratory. It's a safe place to try new things and take some risks. And it's in those risks, because when we get out of our comfort zone, that we really learn a lot. We learn about ourselves and we grow a tremendous amount. So take classes that sound interesting, not necessarily those where there's an easy A. Because sometimes it's not till we look in the rearview mirror that we see patterns in ourselves and we learn things about ourselves. And, try out for things that you may not get. Run for an office that you might not win. Apply for some scholarship that's difficult to get. And if you don't get it, then just move on and find something else that's interesting. Because there's so many opportunities here. And I think if we're afraid of failing and, what that might look like or feel like, we're really missing out. Because we learn so much more from our failures than we do from our successes, right? When we succeed, we think it's all because of our brains and personality, right? And when we fail, we're really forced to think about, gosh, what was that about? What do I learn so that I make a new mistake next time? So I would just encourage you to really go for it and try something different.
Yeah, this certainly is one of the best environments you can ever be in to take risks that, as I'm sure we all have experienced, once you get into a career, you want to try new things, but the impact of something not going right becomes, much higher, right? Okay, so thinking about taking risks, with that you can, there's an impact in some way or another. So one of the core values that Purdue has is this idea of an impact. Making an impact, in your life, in the lives of others, within the community or the world. So thinking about that concept of impact, Art, I'm leading you in, helping you out here. What sort of mindset should be in place when you make to make your impact both personal and positive?
Everyone should be very concerned before I talk. First of all, I just personally love listening to other people's thoughts. Like this is the greatest thing that I found when I was at Purdue, is just actually listening to a lot of the alum that come on that visit. Unlike, don't listen to me though. But on the impact side, the biggest thing when I was here, a lot of it was about me and kind of getting that first job and paying those bills. And what I'd like to tell my younger self is Abraham Lincoln was, in college too, but he was Abraham Lincoln at that time also. And Condoleezza Rice, who was just here, was in Alabama and then went to college, and she was that person that she is the person as the Secretary of State, the former Secretary of State. And when you start thinking about that, and you start thinking you have the ability to really make a huge impact, and every breath is a gift. Choose wisely how you use that gift. And we have a beautiful, amazing planet here, but we also have challenges on this planet. So if I believe each and every one of us has a unique superpower. Each one of these people in the group, everyone in the audience has a superpower that no one else has. And when you choose how you spend your time, choose really intentionally how you want to spend that time and where you want to make the impact. And we have issues in energy, climate change, education. Use those superpowers as you go out in the work world. It's things that help yourself to build great families, pay the bills, but also try to solve some of these huge issues that we're facing as this little planet called Earth that's flying through this universe that's been going on for trillions of years. We're either going to succeed together or die together. And I think it's really, really important to be intentional about the choices that we're trying to solve. So.
I think that's a great message. Patrick, the same question to you. Impact.
Similar, I'd say, to what Art said. When I think about impact, let me take a business perspective. There's how many business students out there? Are there any businesses? Few? Okay. So, you learn a lot about return on investment. And, there should be a return on it. If you invest in something, you should get a return on that. And I'd like to shift that thinking. I'd like to start trying to measure impact of investment. What goes out? Maybe it doesn't come back in this generation, next generation. But the people that we talk about, Aristotle and those, they had an impact on our society for centuries. We have the power to impact for centuries ahead of us. And I just like for us to take a perspective that's not me-oriented or even my kids-oriented, but look out 10 centuries and say, what kind of impact am I leaving? What kind of legacy am I going to leave behind? Because that's how those people thought. So what's our legacy? What are we going to leave behind that changes the trajectory of human existence? I know that sounds big, but we're all doing it. You are all doing it. And so I'd like to think differently about impact and think about it as what's the impact of investment that we make, of our time and our resources? And will we have that impact that changes the trajectory for generations to come? I want a great world for my great-great-grandchildren. I mean, that's what I want to dream into. Because my great-great-grandmother had a vision, and I'm living that for her. So I want to make sure I pass that on to the next 2, 3, 5, 10 generations. So that's impact.
And I know sometimes it can be almost daunting to even think about great-great-grandchildren when you're worried about 152 and passing the class. I'm the proud father of a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old, and anytime either one of them just blows up on something that, quite frankly, doesn't really deserve the level of anguish they're giving it, I always remind them of 3 months before, 1 year before, something that they were stressed about then, it's nothing. So think more about what you can do into the future, because that's, as you said, that's where the impact can really be. Thank you, both. How are we feeling? Everybody's good? Yeah, water?
Very
right?
good.
All right. Do we need a 2-minute moderated timeout, or? All right.
They gave me Grey Goose.
Gray Goose. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where's that?
It's not that kind of discussion.
You want some Grey Goose?
All right, Steve, to you. When you as an EIR consider your time on campus, what are you hoping students gain from your interaction with you?
Good question. All good questions, by the way, Drew.
Thank you.
I think if there's one thing I had to hone in on, I think what the message we've tried to share with the students that come and speak with us is that your career path from here, so from Purdue, is not always a straight line, right? And we're here to tell you, a lot of us, probably most of us, that that path has got a lot of zigs and a lot of zags. And it's okay if you fail forward every once in a while. You're not going to get it right every time. I do think that Purdue does prepare you better than other universities to get it right. But hey, we're at that point 22 years old, or in some cases grad students 25 years old. Not sure we've got it all thought out yet. I know I didn't. I didn't decide what I wanted to do until my senior year. And even then, I wasn't really sure that the career I chose was the right one. And I can tell you, I've zigged and I've zagged. So if there's anything that we can leave behind, is it's not going to probably be a straight line. And so if you're worried about the first job, that's good. You want a good first job, and you want to succeed in each one of those zigs, but it's going to be pretty wavy.
Excellent, okay. So for a little bit of background here, I had put together a huge list of questions, and then I asked everyone here to pick their favorite two. And this next question was by far the most popular, by far. So, which I find interesting, but we'll get into it as we start to discuss. So, Lorna, to you, when you think back on your career, what is the most significant decision you made? Did you ever have a meaningful pivot point? And was there a Purdue experience that influenced or impacted that decision?
Thank God there's a question I can finally answer.
All right.
Oh my goodness. Glad I chose this one. I learned early on in my career as an auto executive, and I liken it back to my experience here at Purdue, you got to ask for help. And or ask for the job you're interested in, or you got to ask. And I think oftentimes people think, and there were people at General Motors that thought if they did everything they should do, that someone was going to tap them on the shoulder and pick them up. I think they even called it the Chevrolet Angel. So there is no angel out there. You got to ask. And I liken it back to, I was starting my second semester sophomore year, and I was a history major, and I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. And then a little voice said, hey, what do I do if I'm not a lawyer and I'm a history major? And back then, in the mid-'70s, and the first one to go to college, you needed that job after you graduated. You needed to pay it back, so to speak, with your parents' investment. So I asked my good friend, who was a year ahead of me and was working at Krannert, and she got me on a path of the business school, which was a really good choice. I didn't become a lawyer. I did end up with 3 Saturday classes that semester when I made the switch. It wasn't 7:30, but it was 8:30, 9:30, and 10:30. But I lived through that, and I learned the lesson of remember to ask for help. Along the way, that's so important, and also ask for the kinds of things you want to do. You see a job out there, that's how I ended up being the president and CEO of Goodwill Industries. Somebody asked me, would you do this job? And I said, I'm not interested, but if you want to talk to me about being president, I'm happy to talk. Next thing I knew, I was. So you got to ask.
Thank you. Emily, same question to you.
You know, I'd have a lot to say the same as Lorna. And I'd say, first of all, you know, Purdue became such a part of me. It's sometimes hard to separate, like, where Purdue stops, both on the sort of the right brain and the left brain. You know, as an engineer, you learn a sort of a disciplined way of solving problems and looking analytically at things, so the frontal lobe, and then all the extracurricular activities and all the people-related things was, you know, sort of the emotional part of the brain and that sort of development. And I think those technical skills sort of got me the first job, but I think as I progressed in my career, it was really leaning more on some of the emotional intelligence and some of the people side of things, because that's actually who get things done. And I think, my prior answer had been about as undergrads being willing to, or as students being willing to take risk and try new things. And I'd echo Lorna in terms of, I think in your professional life, it's the same thing. You don't have to be able to do everything in the job description before you apply for a job. If you can do most of it, you go for it, and take a bit of a risk and get help on the parts you don't know, right? Or figure out how to learn it. I mean, YouTube's kind of amazing, right? What you can learn. So, but I'd say, Purdue gave me confidence to try those things and to ask for help, and be willing to pivot, all the time. Get out of your comfort zone, try new things. So it's similar in my professional life as it was as a student.
Jack, to you.
Okay, I don't know that I had that on my list, but okay.
Your name is here in bold.
Okay, perfect.
So.
Well, I mean, it's actually perfect. I mean, I think probably because I have a very checkered past, I've made very many pivots. My career would probably be best summed up with that game Chutes and Ladders or something. My first one that got me to Purdue, I started in music school at another university and, decided I didn't want to be a starving artist the rest of my life and ended up here. And it was probably one of the best decisions I made at that time. I left here and went to Procter & Gamble and then left there because I wanted to go to business school because I wanted to be an investment banker. I never was. I did a lot of different career things. I was working at Charles Schwab as the head of marketing there, one of the best jobs I ever had. And I worked for co-CEOs, Chuck Schwab and another CEO, and probably the worst person I've ever met in my life. And I had to leave a job that I didn't really want to leave, but I absolutely hated it every day. I had to pivot and say, what in the heck am I going to do next? Do I even want to work in corporate America? And I ended up in the job, for me, that was the best fit in my entire life, and spent 13 years there as a CEO. But each of those were pivots that I think I learned here at Purdue to reflect on myself, ask a lot of people for input and advice, listen to them, but don't take any of them for their word, and then be very internal and true to myself of what is going to make me happy, what am I going to be good at doing, and where can I make an impact. I spent a lot of time at Purdue talking about what can you do to make an impact on things. And so I feel like all those pivots to me at the time were like, oh my God, my life's gonna end, I'm gonna be homeless, this is never gonna work out, and all the pivots ended up going to a much better place. I wish I would have known at some of those times that it would end up okay as I was heading down that chute or trying to climb up that ladder. But pivots happen. I mean, there is absolutely no way you could course out exactly what your career or life, because your career is your life, and they're so intertwined, and sometimes you make decisions in your career for your life, and they all go together. So, pivoting is part of life. Get used to it, and the better you pivot and learn from them, the better you do.
I might even argue, too, having done several of my own, that's what really makes things interesting, right? That's what gives you a life, to talk about and share with your kids and grandkids and family and friends. Amy, same question to you.
Well, I think what you've also heard from everybody who's answering this is that when you come to Purdue, you may think that you're going to do something. I came to Purdue, a student at high school, thought I was going to be a scientist, biologist. Purdue taught me in the first year I should not be a biologist. Nor did I really like that kind of biology. But what Purdue did provide, because of the variety of learning communities here and degrees that you can take, is that I could take the time now to explore different areas of study. And when I was here, they didn't really have a lot of minor opportunities, but I was able to find a degree that no longer exists, sadly, that allowed me to dabble in management and marketing and psychology and sociology. And when I graduated from Purdue, I graduated in the Reagan recession, so talking about pivots, some pivots are going to happen to you that you have no control over and unexpected. So like everybody graduating at that time, you're scrambling for anything, and almost nothing you could find would be related to your degree. But you just have to write out those moments But what Purdue will provide you is the opportunity and the thought processes and that grit and that really good educational background that you will be able to survive and thrive. And so I ended up following a career path that I didn't really have an interest in at the beginning, and it became the bulk of my career, where I was able to work for a large organization on the health insurance side, developing health plans and affecting millions of people, and doing strategic planning, product development, marketing, becoming a very strong systemic thinker. You don't realize it maybe now, but Purdue is teaching you skills you're going to use when these pivot points come up in your life, and they are going to come up. And you're going to respond very well to them, much better than the average person, because you're learning it in this environment.
Dave, to you.
Well, first of all, I'm very thankful that as I was scanning the audience, that my COM 114 professor is not in the audience, because she would see I still ain't no good in public speaking. But in terms of a career pivot point decision that I think was very impactful for me was, if I rewind the clocks back about 18 years ago, I fired the boss and did the unthinkable, gave up a great job that I wasn't necessarily miserable with. Had a great run with Accenture for 10 years, but I knew myself, and that's one huge piece of advice I gave students in my EIR week, was to take personality profiling tests. You know, they're guidance, not gospel, let's say, but they really will give you some leading indicators as to maybe what you're suited to do once upon a time and how you're hardwired. Well, I knew myself enough to know that I needed to be the boss and had to be at least given that chance to try to control my own destiny. And not that I'm a control freak, but I wanted to make sure that I wasn't the 70-something or 80-something that wondered whata, coulda, shoulda. And so I did, right after we had our second child, losing health benefits. Big time risk, where my father, who's a Purdue grad, 1950, he worked for basically 2 companies after he got out of the Korean War. And so it was a horrifying thought, and I was not bred to be an entrepreneur. But it was in my DNA, and I'm thankful that, and now as I sit here with my daughter Gretchen, who's a junior here, who's in the audience, was a major reason why I decided to get off the road and stop traveling 8 days a week, so that I could stay put, see her grow up, and now that I have 2 children here at Purdue, hopefully a third coming in about 4 years, I was able to do that, and I think that was part of that grit, part of that confidence. And frankly, the word I like to use is that I didn't have short-termitis. I didn't suffer from that disease that I think a lot of corporations do, because they got to make the numbers. Every 90 days, you got to make the numbers. Don't burn the street, so hit your EPS targets. I had to give myself permission to take a couple steps back, not just one. And being the CEO of a company allowed me to, a privately held company, allowed me to ultimately do what I thought was the long-term right play and decision. So I'm very thankful for Purdue for that, and that's what I still try to model today.
I'm going to throw the same question, Rusty, to you, but Dave, you mentioned something that what I hope many of you see is that all of us were in your shoes to varying degrees of, craziness and bewilderment. And I got a 2 out of 17 on my first calculus test. I had straight A's in high school. Never even studied. That was a kick in the pants by all measure. But the learnings that you take from this is that, we've been in that space, and these pivot points can be pretty monumental, both while you're in school as well as into your career. So, Rusty, the question to you. Do you need me to read it again? It's been a while. No, I got it. Okay.
I got it. Yeah, so the pivot point was the day after I graduated. So my degree was in radio and television. I wanted to be a radio disc jockey. And that's the way I put myself through. That's the way I paid for school. I worked a bunch of different radio stations here, other towns, in the summers. And I graduated, and I was already working in Indianapolis. So we get through graduation, and I'm on the radio in Indy And I go, I don't like this. I like the idea of getting there. But once I got there, I didn't like the idea that I was there. And for a lot of different reasons, it's a crazy world, you know, working for people who didn't go to school, they didn't know how to manage you, working for people who had different morals and ethics than I had, working with names of people that you know, but I won't use their names, but you know, they're still on the radio today in Indianapolis, and who at that time participated in things that I didn't participate, and I was not a prude. I lost my decade to smoking weed like everybody else. Well, not like everybody else. I apologize that I put you in my category.
I just got Grey Goose. I don't know what you got over there.
Category, but you know. But I see some of you are pretty good at passing the microphone, so I mean, I'm just guessing.
Yeah.
Just guessing.
We need to turn the video off, please.
Yeah. So I hit crisis like the day after I graduated. And I spent that summer going, oh no, oh no, oh no. And I called Dean Cook because I'd been in mortarboard and Old Masters, and so I knew her. She was our advisor to mortarboard. And I called her and I said, look, I got to talk to somebody. And she goes, yeah? When do you want to talk? Can you come today? I'm in Indianapolis, going to work that night. And I said, sure. So I get in my car, my Volkswagen Beetle. I drive up here, and 52 miles. I remember looking, and I sat in her office and I cried. And that was my pivot, because she said, you know what? Let's get you in graduate school. You need to come back to school. And I did, and I came back to school. And you know, my pivot was I didn't lose my lighthouse. My lighthouse was always entertainment and media. I ended up back in that, but I ended up in a different way. But what she taught me at that moment was the generosity of time. She just gave me her time. And today, if my wife was here, well, first of all, she'd say I cry at McDonald's commercials. So, but you know, she'll say to me, why, you know, I've listened to you all day long. You've talked to person after person after person on the phone. You know, who are those people? Why do you talk to them? I said, because I've got to be generous. Because someone was generous to me. And so, you know, that was my pivot point, but that was the big learning out of that, was when someone's generous to you and you're generous to them, you find your way. And yeah, thanks for asking the question. Who wants me to pass?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. You know, so Lorna started us off with that about asking for help. And I think that's really key. There is so much available to us here. Again, that ecosystem. For me, it was pretty monumental. I had many times where I decided whether I wanted to be an engineer, I want to go to business, I want to go home. And you know, even if it's just your friends or your roommate or whomever, there is a system that is in place, and there's always someone asking for help, right? It's such a key thing. I'm going to be conscious of time. We'd like to save a little bit of time at the end for questions, so maybe start thinking of those. Please no weed questions. I mean, you know, so we don't get in trouble. Hey, man.
I live in California. It's an honest place.
It's cool. Hey, I'm from Michigan. We're trying to keep up. Okay, so the next, I'm going to move on to the next question, and this one was also extremely popular. So Steve, I'm going to throw this one to you first. Okay. If you could choose one sentence to define your leadership style, what would that be? Run-on sentences are welcome.
Can I read from my notes?
Sure.
I have a
fantastic
answer.
By all means, go. Yeah, do. Is it tweet length?
It's tweet length. It's
Perfect.
tweet length, yeah.
Okay.
I just got to find it in my notes here. I know, it's on the other page.
Oh, there you go. Page 2?
Yeah, page 2. All right. And I got to admit, I kind of stole a little bit of this from one of the people I admire a lot in the management world. For those of you that know who Liz Wiseman is, she wrote the book Multipliers. If you have not read the book, Rusty, it strikes a lot of what we just talked about how you build those around you up, and it's not all about you. Anyway, I stole a little bit of this from her, although it's got some of my words in. And that's this. I try to get more out of people than they think they have in them. And I give them, really what I'm trying to do is make them smarter and more capable. So, it's not about me. I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I heard that message from down there. I'm not either. I can relate. But if I can surround myself with smart people and make them smarter, I feel like I've done something.
Yeah, no, that's great.
That's my tweet.
Emily. You can have another one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. I would say that it is inclusive, fun, transparent, and pretty direct.
Excellent. Lorna.
Okay, I thought about this a lot, and I liken my leadership style because I too am not an expert on anything. Just know a bit about a lot of things to be dangerous. That I'm like a conductor of an orchestra, trying to bring all sorts of parts of an organization together for one goal. And so I think of it as an orchestra conductor and a coach on the side.
Art.
Mine isn't a sentence, it's just one word. I think it's the most powerful force in the world. It's love. I've had the privilege to travel to over 100 countries, and a fundamental truth is I don't care your race, religion, ethnicity, socioeconomic class, gender, is how I treat you, is how I treat myself. We're all brothers and sisters on this planet. And you give somebody a hug, you get a hug back. You call somebody a jerk, they call you a jerk back. And it's no different as a leadership style. I think there's no greater gift than giving someone love, empathy, listening. The older I get, the more I learn that I'm ignorant, and I need to just listen and ask more questions. And it starts with the individual too, in the mirror. Be the change you want to see in the world. /love. Thanks.
And Dave.
Which Dave?
Oh, that's right. That's a great. There's like 12 Daves up here. Well, which one? You guys, both of you.
I'll take
Go
it,
ahead.
Dave. You want to pick up right after?
Let's just do both.
Yeah, well, we'll do both because I didn't answer this one, but I've got an answer for it. I help things grow, mainly because most folks think I'm fertilizer, probably. I don't know exactly what that is. So there's a lot of bullshit. But, it's like in companies that I've worked with, in the brands that I've been associated with, it's all been growth. And when it comes to teams, I want them to grow. And my daughters, I want them to grow. It all started, by the way, in this theater. I watched Grand Hotel with my wife of 35 years now on her first date in this very room. So, yeah.
Well, now it all makes sense why Rusty can't get TSA pre-check. Just dawned on me. Okay. Cue the phone back up again.
Yeah.
My leadership style, I cherry-picked this. I poached this from somebody else. It's always have your radio station tuned to WIFY, not WIFM. So WIFY is what's in it for you. The best leaders, the best bosses, the best people I've ever had coaching me, etc., always remembered that they had 2 ears and 1 mouth, and they were listening more than they were talking, and they were helping more than they were trying to get helped, because givers get. And so, and by the way, my daughter's a nursing student, so she can vouch for that from you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. But that is what I think has given me some upward mobility, is to let others lead sometimes, and get out of their way, and try to set others to be successful. Zig Ziglar said it best. So that's probably it.
Yeah. Thank you. And Teresa.
It's on? Oh, thank you. So, Rusty, I had a Barb Cook moment as well, and I know Emily knew Barb Cook very well. July of 1979, I had applied to all kinds of graduate schools, got accepted, and I thought I'd learned everything from Purdue, so I decided not to come back. I didn't even apply. And Barb calls me in July and she says, "We're worried about your education, Teresa. The woman in charge of your program at IU has passed away. You need to come back." And I said, "Barb, I didn't even apply." And she said, "I already talked to Bruce Schertzer. You're in, and we have an internship." So that generosity of time that Barb, Betty, Helen, Dorothy, Bev gave us was a gift that we get to keep on giving. So I love that story. Okay, my one sentence, Drew, and I call it my leadership DNA: love and integrity in action, taking care of the in-between to deliver results. There's a lot to that sentence. If you want to hear more, be happy to share it. Thank you.
Well, thank you for those of you that shared. I've been taking some notes, and the listening and love has come up, which is pretty unique. I think if you'd asked any executives even 10 years ago, I don't think we would have heard that word. And I think that speaks to we're going to dive in for the next question here. But it speaks to sort of how we as humans are starting to change in the work environment in which we act and evolve every day. And it is the human condition is starting to take front and center stage. And I see it personally in a number of the organizations. They're starting to put employee experience first, right? And it's a big shift, but those types of things are really important. So it's just interesting to me. I've heard before executives, they'll use the word listen, and then they sit there and talk for 20 minutes, right? The 2 ears, one mouth. Apparently it's just all mouth and no ears. And then there's those who, they listen to react, not listen to understand. And I think that's, and all of us, I'm sure, have been guilty of that at one point and another, and probably still are in many ways. But when you listen, you're truly not trying to figure out what you need to say back. It's the next question that you should ask to understand more. So thinking about that from an organizational standpoint, Mark, to you, what do you understand from your experience in large business and corporate environments about organizational behavior that we can lend to the current conversation for students here at Purdue? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a mouthful.
Yeah, there you go.
Look, I lead a company with over 23,000 employees across the country, and so you as a leader, you have to have influence. And one of the best things you can do as a leader is influence and put into action what the goals and what is the mission of your company, and put that into action and show that in your day-to-day. So all the things you've heard up here are all part of that. Listening, never asking somebody to do something you want to do yourself. Lead by example, those type of things. And I think you can take all the things I just said and what you heard others say up here, you can apply them in your day-to-day classroom setting, and I would encourage you to do that. And when you come out of school and when you get into whatever you decide to do, just apply those same things. There's no kind of magic sauce to what we've all talked about up here. And I think you can apply a lot of those things to any organization, but just be mindful of the organization you're in and what drives those people forward. What is the mission of that organization, and align yourself to that. And it really starts right here with your classes, with your clubs, with your experiences. The only thing I would add is, I'm sure I speak for some others, we all sat where you're sitting, and I wasn't, I was a studious student. I made sure I got good grades, but I wasn't like hyperactively involved in a million other things. I had friends around campus. I did my share of time at Harry's and other places like that. Those were fun activities. But I got to where I am, basically working hard and applying the culture of the companies I've worked at and aligning myself to those goals. And any one of you can do the same thing. It really, there's no magic to it. It's just taking all the things you heard up here and applying them. So,
thank you. Amy, question for you.
And I've worked in large billion-dollar organizations that were, very matrixed, the old way you used to say it, very focused on org chart, the old way of looking at things. And I think going forward, it really is about the function, knowing the mission and vision, knowing the value of what the organization is doing, but also then understanding all the various functions. And in large organizations, in small organizations, in your family, you depend on each other. And whether it's in an organization or anywhere, being a good team player is vitally important. It's also important that you have, I think, a servant mentality, because I think regardless of your role, everyone plays a leadership role in a team, in an organization at some point, or maybe that's your full-time job. But we've talked about helping others be successful. I think it's also important to focus on the strengths of the people around you. A lot of effort goes into trying to improve people's weaknesses. I think that's foolish in my personal experience. I think what you want to do is focus on the strengths of the people on your team and then let them use those strengths for the success of everyone else. And when I look back at my career, some of the best, most valuable memories I have are from helping others succeed. And knowing that you help them maybe form relationships with people that they were didn't think so highly of, but when they started looking at the strengths of that individual, and the other one did the same, there's a lot of relationship building that can happen if you do that. So I think also the listening is something that there isn't enough emphasis on. We all want to be experts in a lot of roles in an organization. That's something that you do provide, but you also need to be a good listener. And there's a great book out there. I can't remember the author right now, but it's called The Listening Life. And it's just really one of those things where you read through it and you're like, yes, yes, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would recommend that to everyone as well.
And then Mr. Clifton, to you.
Well, that makes it easy rather than the Dave. So,
Yeah.
The thing that I would say that I kind of come back to is I've forgotten the question. It's been long enough on circling back and listening. So give me that one more time. I'm sorry.
What do you understand from your experience in large business and corporate environments about organizational behavior that we can lend to this current conversation with Purdue students?
The large corporate environment, is one that you've got to make a single mark in, and it's hard to remember. And a lot of it comes back to kind of listening, staying focused on, like, what one thing can I do that really may get noticed? Because you get into organizations with 300,000 people. And you're competing for attention across a lot of different things. What you really want to do is kind of like find what you're really good at, focus on that one thing, and then really kind of do that so well that people do notice it and do talk about it. And it may sound a little selfish, but there is a little bit of brand development you have to do for yourself in this. Because when you're competing in large organizations, like you are at Purdue, which is a large organization unto itself, you do have to stay a little focused on making sure people do notice what is that one thing that I'm really good at. And so that would be that.
And I think that's important too. And one of the reasons I asked this question is, at least in my experience, there was an understanding from any future employer that if you made it through Purdue, you were going to be good, right? Because there's not small classes, right? And you basically have got to figure this thing out. There's certainly a support system, but it's still a big organization, and it gets even bigger if you go, work for the big companies that are, part of our global economy. So I'm always interested in some experience in how that, how you should start to shape. And I think the building your own brand, I think that's actually really important because it's looking inward and understanding what's meaningful for you and where the impact you can make. If you do that well and you're passionate about that, that will stand out. Right? Those things become important. Okay, we're in the home stretch. Everybody excited? Yes, everyone's excited. All right, come on, stay with me. All right, Beth. I have a 12-year-old little girl that falls into this. We now live in this age of perfectionism. The sense of oneself is driven almost entirely on external and subjective measurement. How can we build a sense of success within ourselves and translate that into our lives and careers while embracing the reality that none of us are perfect?
So the first thing I would start with is the word perfect is really irrelevant because everybody has their own definition of perfect. And as I told somebody earlier today, I said, well, if you're perfect, then you're pretty much dead, right? So who wants to be dead? And I'd argue, who wants to be perfect? So I think today there is a lot of focus on what's visible and obvious to you as you see, but I would flip that around and say, for everybody in the audience that's trying to figure out what they want to do, where they want to go, all that kind of stuff, you have to start inside first. Because if you don't have that inside built, the outside doesn't matter. Because you will find people who focus solely on the outside, they're missing something. And they know they're missing something because they haven't tended to the work on the inside. And the opposite is true of people who spend time getting to know themselves and then understand more about who they are. They may make better decisions for themselves. Yes, you still have to pivot, but pivoting is just part of life. That's just, if you don't pivot, then I'd say something's wrong. And so I think if you start to look at things from the perspective of what do you want in the world, and then what's important to you as part of that, and why do you want it, that's a really, really powerful question that you need to continue to ask yourself again and again over the years. Because just because you feel really comfortable with it, when you graduate, you know where you're going, and everything's fine. 2 years later, you may have a totally different viewpoint. But if you don't ask that question of yourself regularly, you're not going to know it. And you're going to end way off course and all of a sudden say, how'd I end up here? So I think it's really important that as you develop and grow, you understand what you want to be, but you don't put it within a box of perfection. You put it within a box of what's important to you and how does that play out for you.
That's great. Thank you. Jack, same to you.
Yeah, so I think very similar. I think the idea of perfectionism is, it's very much an internal thing that you have to be authentic and true to yourself. I think my biggest success in life came from realizing that the people I admired or were looking up to or felt competitive against were not perfect. And I was like, oh, it's okay not to be perfect. I mean, so much of what you do in school and jobs is trying to be perfect so you can get ahead and get rewarded. And I think for me, when I realized that that was okay to fail at some things and nobody was perfect was hugely changing for me. I think, we also now live in this world where so many of the things that we put out look like they're perfect. So I work in the fashion industry. Well, that looks like a perfect on the surface sort of a thing. If you look at my Instagram, everything looks perfect. It's a visual medium. I'm not going to put a bad picture out there. But that's not all me. That's a piece of me. I like to get the followers and like all that stuff, but that's a piece of it. So I think you got to also look at the things that you think are perfect, and then when you get to authentically know them or know what's behind that, you realize that that is a piece of it. People come across differently on Twitter than they do on their Facebook, than they do on Instagram. And so I think those all come together. They're all relevant. I think it always goes back, though, to your internal true self and being authentic and true to yourself, no matter what those external things that you do need to put out. It's all part of, as you said, your personal brand and things that you need to do in today's world to get ahead and be competitive and succeed. But at the end of the day, you got to be very true and authentic to yourself, and then being clear that it's okay that not everybody else is perfect and you aren't either, and just get used to that. Huge relief.
Thank you. Gary, same question for you.
Yeah, it's an interesting kind of concept around perfectionism. And for me, being perfectly imperfect is okay. You know what I mean? And I think there's something to be said about that. For me, it's, there's another two more P words that kind of make me up, and that's being patiently persistent. I think there's power in wanting to strive for perfection, but there's also power in giving yourself some grace, being patient with yourself and others as they're striving there for that kind of level of excellence and perfection. And when you can find that right balance, being patient, but being persistent, when you fail, having that grit, being persistent to get back up and try again, and also giving others the grace to be able to fail and encourage them and mentor them to get back up and try it again. There's a lot of power in that. So the striving perfection is huge, but being patient during that process of those imperfections is just as important.
That's sage advice. And Patrick, to you.
Great answers. Mine's different. So,
Perfect.
So I'm going to take perfect from an adjective to a verb. To perfect something means that it's already in play. So you got to put something in play to perfect it. So a soundbite, so that's one soundbite. I'm going to give you another soundbite that we came up with this morning is to avoid failure is a failure. To avoid failure is a failure. So you got to get out there. And then I'm also going to go with something else that was said here too, is about your authentic self. Nobody is more perfectly you than you. And so you got to find that superpower. You got to find out what that thing is inside that's so uniquely you. And you're doing that right now. And we've all done, spent career like working it. And we've talked about pivots. We've talked about imperfection. We've talked about mistakes. And that's all a part of finding that perfect you, that superpower that you have. Because when you put that superpower in play and you really have that self-reflection, the more you do that, the more you have that unique part of you that nobody else can put a finger on, but they're going to put you on that project. They're going to select you for that thing because nobody else is you. So I love the term to perfect things. I'm constantly trying to perfect things. And I'm constantly trying to perfect myself and find out who that person is. And in a different part of my career, a new part of me emerges. I gotta ooh, I want to perfect that because that's not working right. So I love the term perfect as a way to live my life, as a way of self-exploration. So
I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, so final question. I've asked all of the panelists to answer, and I'm going to go first to give you guys time to think about your answers in what I would like to call a condensed version. We got time, all right? So the final question, what should students today be focused on in order to be successful in the future? So big, broad question. So I wrote down 3 things for myself. One, we talked a lot about pivoting. It happens a lot. It happened to me. I just took a new role as a partner in a small design firm. So the announcement, I don't work for that company anymore. Yeah, super fun. I pivoted, right? She had no idea. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, my business cards are different than what she announced, so it'll be fine. Authentic. This one, personally, for me, took a really long time to figure out who I truly was. And as soon as that happened and I let that be an okay thing, it's been amazing for me personally, both professionally as well as in my family life and friends and relationships. And then one thing that I hope you keep from this, and all of us, and I hope everyone here would agree, is this idea of you always keep learning. Like your 4 years here, or 5 or 6 or whatever, that's just the start, right? That's just the start, right? It's the entrance ramp to a lifelong of learning and growing. So with that.
Yeah, I'll keep it short. Probably 2 things that kind of stuck out with me is prioritize. No, your number one reason why you're here is not to have fun. It's just not, right? It's to work hard, make good grades. But having fun is probably close to, right? But prioritize, just keep your priorities straight. And then the other thing here, I think it's important for you to network. Build relationships. I like to say build relationships upward with your professors and people like us here. Network here laterally here with your peers, help them out, share with them. And also downward to those other high schoolers and other people here that are aspiring to even get into Purdue.
Thank you. So mine is know who you are and be that perfectly well. Remain curious and love. And the first phrase of my thoughts for students came from Francis LaSalle. And the word perfect, if I understood his writings correctly, came from Hebrew. It's in its origins, and it meant to come round, to become whole. So I have this belief that we come into the world and we know who we are, and then something happens and we forget, which becomes a human journey. And so be that perfectly well is knowing who you are and bring that to the world. And when you become integrated and whole and authentic, many of the words that my colleagues up here have said is about being perfect. The remain curious and love, I have to tell you that those thoughts started when I was a student here. As a graduate student, I taught a course called Personal Growth and Development, and I had a tragic event where my mother died suddenly when I was teaching that class. Another reason why Barb and Bev and all of them just helped me through that. And it gave me a hole in my heart that took me a while to heal. And I taught that class, and 2 weeks after my mother died, the assignment was for these first-year students at the age of 18 to write their eulogy. So I wrote mine too. So when I get to tell my life story, I actually say, let me tell you the questions I hope are asked of me at the end, when I end this conscious lifetime. And one is, was I Teresa? Did I love, and did I love well?
It's beautiful. I'm going to encourage you to keep the world as big as you can keep it. Because the dirty little secret is the world gets smaller from this point on. You're going to go to work in a function in an area that you've studied, and you're in a company, and you're going to be surrounded by the people in that company, in that function, in that geography. You're likely to meet your friends there. You're likely to maybe fall in love someone there. And then you're going to hang out there. And then your world gets really small. And you look back and you go, wow, you know, I think I knew someone once in college that was from that place that I wanted to always go, but I can't call him now because I haven't kept up with him. It'd be really odd to say, you know, I always wanted to go to Ethiopia, and I know you were from Ethiopia, and we shared a class together, but I haven't talked to you in 15 years. So I'd say keep the world as big as you can keep it. Travel, read, be curious about the otherness of people, and I think it'll serve you well.
Yeah, these are great. So I would say, I'll echo some because it's what I think about it. One is to be curious, to be open to new things, right? Suspend your judgment, to love, right? Find your peeps, have relationships, and most of all, be you.
So I would say pretty much everything they've said, and I would add, you guys get to come up with something here. I don't know what it'll be down there at the end, but
Milk duds.
one of the things that I think is really important is self-forgiveness. I spent many years berating myself because I didn't do this right or didn't do that right or wasn't perfect. I didn't do it in such a way that I thought somebody wanted. And I wasted a whole lot of time being open to new and different possibilities, different ways that things could happen other than what my expectations were of something. So I think that as part of self-forgiveness, if you find yourself with a result that's not exactly what you wanted or were trying for, let go. Just move through it and move on. Don't linger. Learn from it, but then move on. And I think that's really, really important because if you don't do that, you tend to get yourself into ruts. And that's really limiting for you. So all that, and then remember to forgive yourself.
So I think I'll take it back to something we talked about this morning. So I think you've got this amazing environment here at Purdue University, and there's kind of a couple of aspects to it. You have your classes that help you think and become great problem solvers to do your job. You have all these amazing opportunities across activities, extracurriculars, to be leaders and grow and learn how to work, because the classes don't teach you how to work. And then as Rusty just said, you have this amazing, very diverse set of people that are from all over the world here in Lafayette, Indiana, that can help teach you how to live. And I think that learning how to think, learning how to work, and learning how to live will all go together as you move out into the world, and you have this amazing opportunity to try it all out here and fail at it and try again, and there's just not a better place to do it.
There's a famous Chinese philosopher that has a saying, wisdom is knowing someone else, enlightenment is understanding yourself, and that was by Lao Tzu. And I think that's the secret sauce. And I think at birth, we're probably closest to who we are and our superpowers. And then we get domesticated. We have parents that love us. We have siblings that love us, family members. We have marketing, all these things that teach us how we should be or what we should look like or what we should do. And we lose our way. And there's a tool that we each have inside of us, and it's called our heart. And I think that heart is a compass. And to listen to that compass is actually telling you who you really are meant to be. And so try to listen to that compass. Close your eyes, and when you're with somebody, does that person make you smile? Does that person inspire you? Do you just laugh? Time flies by. Write that person's name down. If you're with someone else it's just toxic, you walk away and it's like the conversation's been long, it's dreary, write that person's name down too. It's just as important to understand what you like as what you don't like. Same thing with classes, anything that you interact with. At the end of each day, before I go to sleep, I reflect back on that day and try to check in with my compass. Who were the people that inspired me? What were the moments, like places, like I'll be in a certain location by the fountain. For whatever reason, I've always had a positive energy by the fountain here at Purdue. And I try to be tapped in these energies that you can't maybe see or feel, but they're there. And I believe we have 5 senses, but we're gonna find out we have many, many senses. And be conscious. And one last thing, I've always loved the obstacle course, and I love those rings where you grab the rings and you can, if you're in the sink, you grab each ring. And I remember I used to be really good at that until I think in my head as I'm zipping across on the obstacle course, I'm thinking, I can't believe I'm catching all these rings with my eyes closed. And that's exactly when I'd fall. When I turn on the brain and stop being in the now and being present, I turned off the art compass. With that, I wish you all the best and love you guys.
And I got to follow that. Hey, I hope somebody's taking notes, because I would love this TED Talk. I would love, this is good stuff.
Well, other than the momentary
that part.
Denver situation.
We can edit that.
We got it. Yeah. It's
yeah. The two things that come to mind, and I'll be short. One is strive. I love that word. And the other one that I tell almost every student that we talk to, and that is speak up. Don't be afraid to speak up. And I think that's what I've got.
I'm going to have to say ditto to everything that just was said, and ditto to what's about to come. And I think, for me, I would say just be committed to learning, and not just academically, but from the people around you. The best things you're going to learn are from the people that come into your life. And then also, don't go to work and put your head down. Don't spend your time just grinding it out. Keep your head up. Never be closed to opportunities. The things that sometimes frighten you, that you start to think about, well, maybe, but I don't know how to do this. Those are going to be the best experiences and probably the biggest successes of your life. And don't forget, it's about the people. At the end of your career, it's about the people.
Yeah, I would encourage everybody, if you can always remember to just keep things in perspective. Very few things in life are as good as you think they are, but more importantly, very few things are as bad as you think they are. And if you live and remember that, there are very few things in your life that you can't recover from. No matter what your age, no matter where you are in your life, very few things you cannot recover from. So keep things in perspective. Don't stress out.
A lot of what's been said, I think you can summarize in two things. Enjoy the journey, don't think about the end, and be kind to yourself.
Eloquent. I'm going to quote from my favorite philosopher, Robin Williams, in the movie Hooked, where he's trying to fly, and he can't remember. And he looks at his children and remembers joy. That's what I offer the most. Like, even when I talked about the single thing you got to find in what you want to do in your career, or where you're going to get noticed in a big company or whatever you do, you also have to make sure that joy is kind of associated with it. Happiness is part of it. And it kind of gets back to what Art was edging on to. To make you whole, it really matters.
Best advice, don't get caught. No, you still want to say ditto? I'm kidding. That's not my advice. Number one, I would say practice deferred gratification. In this age of the expectations being that you put on yourselves, that you need instant results, instant windfall, please don't fall into that trap. Number two, be a mentor. You're getting good advice to go seek out mentors, and you should. Go find some good mentors. Probably none of you want us like me now. But I would say you want to absolutely be a mentor and learn how to lead at any age. You can do that. And number 3, I love it. Love is the killer app. Don't ever forget that.
What they said. No, I actually don't like the question. I'll go back to that. I don't like the question. No, but it's a great question. So, but success usually is viewed as an external measure of me. And I think what you're hearing is success should be internally driven, of what you think of yourself and what does success mean for you. Now, I would say that, being a consultant, that it was really important for me to understand the game that I was in, the game of a new company, a new employer, my own company. I need to understand the game and the rules of the game and what success means in that game. But to me, it was a game. It's always been a game. But if I can figure out the algorithm of the game, then I can play the game, and they can play their game. But when I look at what success means for me it means passion. It means waking up every Monday morning going like, I get to do this today. And so I think linking into my passion is probably one way I'd look at success. And then the other one, and we've talked about it too, is resilience, because you can't wake up every Monday morning with passion because you get knocked down a lot. But resilience has got to be another part of that formula where you're saying like, I'm going to get up today, I'm going to go after it again. And that might happen for a day, it might happen for 6 months, it might happen for 3 years of a job that you don't love. And then you go, I don't love this job, do I? And then you move on to something else. But I think that's it for me is passion and resilience are probably the most important thing for success, internally defined, not some sort of external. And when you find that superpower inside of yourself, and it's that intangible thing that they go like, I don't know what it is about Patrick, but we need him on this project. That's success in a day for me.
Well, thank you all very much. I got to meet most of these folks within the last 24 hours, and I can see why they were all picked for EIR. It's incredible to share this time with you, so thank you. We are past the allotted time. Do we have time for questions? Does anybody like places to go? Astronauts?
People are headed for the doors, I don't know.
Yeah, cricket. Does anybody have any questions? And if you don't immediately, but most of us will probably be around for a little bit, so if you want to ask some individual questions, I'm sure everyone will be open. Oh, yeah. Oh, we got questions. All right, there's microphones, or if you just want to yell it out, whatever works.
Right there.
Yeah, there should be.
Jonathan, we don't stay. It's just for you, Art. Hey, I'm Jonathan. Thanks again for coming.
Hey, Jonathan.
Hi, Jonathan.
Hey, Patrick. Hey, everyone. So I've been reading a book, The Second Mountain by David Brooks, which is a great book. It's challenged me in a lot of different ways. One of the things I've been reflecting a lot on is the idea of vocation and calling and not just career. So one of the things that stuck out through our time here, none of you have flaunted any kind of professional success or achievement or even titles or anything like that. So for you then, and you actually got a little bit of this, Patrick, at the end here, maybe complete the sentence. Success for me is, and so what is it? How do you define it for yourself internally? And if I could tack on a bonus question, what's one book you'd recommend that we'd be remiss if we didn't read it ourselves?
Anyone in particular?
So for me, it's happiness. If you aren't happy, nothing else matters.
Answered. Others? Lorna?
Success for me is seeing other people be successful. And the one book I would recommend is a book my son just wrote, When the Breeze Blew Through. I think it's a life lesson, and it's also a children's book on Amazon.
Book, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I think is an excellent book. The Alchemist. And then I have a philosophy. I think my challenge for you all is to spend some time figuring out what your 2 or 3 core philosophies are that drive you. And if you haven't thought about it, think about it, because that is your superpower, that's your brand, that's the thing that makes you wake up every morning. So I believe we have 2 obligations on this planet from cradle to grave. That's it. One is to take the talent that the universe gave us and hone that as much as possible from cradle to grave. And as we do that, then the second obligation is to put that talent in the world where it shines the most. And that's not always easy either. But to me, that to me would be success internally defined.
Success for me is continual learning and growing. And the book is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, sorry. And this is, he was in Auschwitz, unfortunately, as a Holocaust victim. And the only thing you can have control over is how you react to things. And very powerful book.
Let me just add one thing. I feel like we've talked on very high order needs. I think one of mine has always been, though, financial independence. It certainly drove a lot of my career, so I won't not say that that was a big piece of it. My other ones that were always part of that equation, though, were happiness and connection with other people. And I think for me, all having those in balance and both all successful are, to me, my definition of success.
Oh, a couple more. We got Teresa wants to answer, and then we'll take another question.
Okay, so very quickly then, I just forgot what I was going to say. But what I'll tell you is one book that I think is so powerful, in addition to the ones that you guys have mentioned, is A Team of Rivals. It's about Abraham Lincoln by Doris Kearns Goodwin. Beautiful story about how he brought into his cabinet the people that ran against him and said horrific things because he said the nation deserved the smartest people. And I just remembered my success. Know your purpose and live it.
Thank you. Another question.
Okay. So there's a lot of talk about self-reflection, finding yourself, finding that superpower, and that idea recurred a lot during this conversation. And as a college student, I'm a senior, so I'm graduating soon, and every day I like something different. One day I want to work on one project, and the other day I have something entirely different in my head. So going back to the self-reflection, how do you suggest a college student would do that? Because that self-reflection would also allow me to motivate myself to, get up and work hard. So how do I go about thinking inside? How do I think internally and find something that I like?
I've got two thoughts on that. One, actually, bruises are good things. So when you step into life, when you step into the job, when you step into, you do graduate studies or whatever it is, you're going to get bruised, either through relationship or just things going right or wrong usually, and changes that you didn't expect, or changes in the economy. And all those things will make you step back. So I can tell you to go be thoughtful and reflective on what your one thing is, but the reality is that only occurs through time. You just have to remember it, that as it occurs, I need to use this as a moment to think. And those that are sitting on the stage and beyond, we've done that. It's kind of like we've stubbed our toe. We went down the chute. We climbed back up the ladder, and we use that as that moment. So it's not like you're going to have a magic wand and leave this room and then go be reflective and know your one thing. But keep it in mind, and you will.
So I don't think you want a magic wand. I think that's perfect, because one of the things that, as a younger person, you have to just go do things. You don't know what things are. You can hear what people tell you, but until you actually experience them yourself, that's only then when you find out whether you really want to do that or not. And so I would experiment, try different things. I mean, maybe you change jobs every year or every couple of years. That's okay. There's no rule against that, no law. And I think that the thing that's probably more relevant is that you don't limit yourself and you don't set boundaries that it needs to look like this or it needs to be like that, because that's going to cut off all kinds of other opportunities to consider. So I would look at it a little bit more broadly than trying to find yourself. The find yourself piece is part of the living that goes on. And so when you get to the point where you're actually sitting here, and I can't believe I'm actually up here because I remember that place really well, is I have a lot of things I can look back on now and learn from and kind of group together. But you're still young. Go out and do things. This is when you do it, as you go play.
And I guess I would add to that, when I found my moment of authenticity is when I realized that I'm the guy that likes to try everything. And that's okay. So it's all right that if there's different things that excite you and it changes day to day. Maybe that's the space that you need to live in, and embrace that and figure out how that can be part of what you do, as part of your career.
I'd like to add a couple other thoughts on that piece. Number one, live in the moment, be in the moment. Don't overstress yourself out trying to figure out, kind of who you are every single day. where you're studying for an exam, be in the moment, study for the exam, and be the best you can be at that time. The other piece of advice is, always surround yourself here with other people that really care about you. I mean, each of us we should have at least one, maybe two people in that inner circle. It could be a parent, a friend, it doesn't matter, a mentor, or whatever. But develop your inner circle with people that you can ask, hey, what is it about me? What do you know about me that makes me unique? And that'll give you some insight to what those innate talents and gifts that you have that over time will get you closer to really understanding your true purpose and give you those times to self-reflect a few times a year on that.
I'm going to add one piece to that, because I was going to say that idea of surrounding yourself. Also make sure that those people will be brutally honest with you. Yeah. And you say to them, look, if you really love me, you'll be brutally honest. You got something in your teeth, right? You got to clean your tooth. The person who will tell you that, right? Or something's on your nose, you got to get rid of that. And if we don't have those people, we miss out on a real opportunity to get that feedback in a way that they love you, but they also don't depend upon you. They're just going to be brutally honest, and that's how you improve.
Is anyone else?
One more thing?
Yes, please.
So this is your time to try stuff, too. When I was a chemical engineer back in those days, you had to take a 1-credit PE class required. It's like, okay. So all my friends took volleyball or martial arts. I took a ballet class. Chemical engineer. Walked into ballet class, 25 women. Now, women taking ballet 1 at Purdue, I'm sorry, none of them have never taken ballet before. So not only was I the only guy, I was like the least competent person in the room as well. Now, chemie and all that stuff, and anything of my chemical engineering background did not matter in that room. It was amazing. And I took the 1 credit. At the end of that 1 credit class, the professor said, you've got some natural talent. You should take ballet 2. Sure. So I took ballet 2. Now it's on my time. So I took ballet 2. At the end of ballet 2, she said, you should try out for Purdue Repertory Dance Company. I was like, sure. So I tried out for Purdue Repertory Dance Company. I made the company. So for 5 years, I was dancing. And part of that time, I was a chemical engineer. I was doing my other stuff. I would have never seen that portal if Purdue hadn't required 1 PE credit. And so there's these portals that we have that they're just there, and you take them. Try it. I could have hated dance. I could have said, oh my God, worst decision of my life. Great, fine. 30 years later plus, about 8 years ago, I got to serve on the board for Dance and Performing Arts in Minneapolis. Why? Because I had danced. You just don't know where these things are going to lead someday. So when you say you've got all these different things that you're interested in, I'm like, dang, can I come back? Because that's so cool that you have that opportunity to have all these different experiences, test some stuff out, and then as along the way you find some things that are kind of gold for you, and you go with that, and other things you go like, I'm going to drop that. What a great time to be doing that.
I'm going to call this the end. Thank you everyone for coming, and again, thank you for everyone on stage. Appreciate your time and energy. Cheers. Thank you. Thank you.